If you haven't watched last week's video about this lot of 8 Nintendo Switches that I bought from eBay to see if I could fix and make money, you may want to watch that video first. I'll put a link in the description below. But today, we're going to carry on where we left off last week, and that is with these 3 consoles that I'm not sure are fixable or not. 2 have liquid damage, and this one is most likely not, as it's very bent, but let's see if I can fix them. Leave me a comment in the comment section and tell me how much faith you have in me and if you think I can fix them.
The day after I shot that last clip, I did come down with a cold, so my voice sounds pretty bad right now, so I'll try to keep the talking to a minimum, but the show must go on. I've decided I need to see if this one that I think is not fixable actually works or not, so I'm going to remove the back cover, put a new battery in or a charged battery, and just see if it does anything at all. And just nothing at all. So what I'm going to do is take these 2 apart, and I'm going to see if I can clean off the liquid damage and see if there's anything else that is damaged in these and see if they're possibly fixable. So let's get started. This one seems to have the liquid damage really concentrated right in this area. I'm going to zoom in on this one to get you guys a little bit better view of that. We've definitely got a lot of damage right here, and for sure around this chip, and a few of the little ones here along with this connector. But the rest, I don't see any problems. I am going to need to take this board out to check the other side though, just to make sure there's no liquid damage on the other side. I think it's isolated to this, but I don't know for sure, so I need to take it apart just to make sure. Let's see if we can get this ribbon cable out so we can check the condition of it. That actually looks fine. Now let's check this battery connector. Definitely has a lot of corrosion going on there. There we go. A lot of corrosion there, but not as bad as it could be. We've got a lot on this chip right here. So now we can get this board out. Let's take a look at the other side. There we go right there. We've got some more corrosion under that chip, so it's good we took this out. Oh, look at this. We got more here, a little more right here. Really good we took this board out, because if we wouldn't have, we would have missed all of this. So this is why I wanted to tear it down and make sure that there wasn't any other liquid damage. Given that there's some right here, I'm actually going to take this cover off so we can look at these chips under here and see what those look like. And then after that, I'm going to take it up, look under my microscope, clean it up, and then if I see anything there, I will show it on camera so you can see what I'm doing. All right, there we go. Got the cover off. From what I can tell, there are no signs of any sort of liquid damage. So I think we're okay there. Just need to clean up all this liquid damage. I'm going to be using a toothbrush and some 99% isopropyl alcohol, also known as IPA. So we're going to give it all a good cleaning. The nice thing about IPA is it evaporates quickly. You can see once I spray the air, it'll come out from under the chips and everything. Now, once isn't always good enough for the cleaning on this. I might need to go over it again, but that's at least a start. Now I can see if there's anything that needs to be repaired. So that looks pretty good. We're gonna touch up a few other little areas here. There's one specific area on the back here. This little capacitor right here. Looked like it could use some work. So we're just gonna go over that again. So the first test we're gonna do, we're gonna plug in a known good battery. There we have that. Then I'm gonna plug in a charge cable into it and see if it's charging at all. We got 0.40, 0.39. This is normally around 0.46, but I've seen it go fairly low like that, so this actually might be charging. Don't feel any chips getting really hot. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this board back into the tablet and see if it will actually turn on. Now I've got this put back together just enough to test, so I'm gonna put in the known good battery here, and we'll see if it powers on. So do you think it's gonna power on or not power on? Let me know what you think in the comments. And here we go. Come on, baby. Oh, I see nothing. Nothing at all. Yep, we've got no power at all. Bummer. Okay, it's fine. There's still lots of stuff we can test and check on this thing. One of them, though, is I do want to recheck that charging capability. Now with all the screens and everything plugged in, we should get a normal charging if everything's normal with it. So let's see. 0.39, 0.4. So normally what should happen is this should actually go to 0 and then jump up to 1.4 or so. So I just see this jumping around, so I'm guessing we got a problem in one of these chips. Most likely this one, since there was so much corrosion around it, but I don't know for sure. So first of all, let's test the capacitors around the chip and see if they're shorted to ground. Going to be using the audible setting on my multimeter. This is a good ground plane right here, just this big, large heatsink and shield. So we're going to test these capacitors around this chip. One side should have continuity to ground, the other side should not. These are capacitors, so these are normal readings. 0 here. So overload or no continuity to ground, and continuity to ground there. Okay, and now this one is shorted on both sides. There is continuity to ground, so this tells me that either this or likely this. It could also be something else further down in the circuit, but just from my experience with these, this chip can go bad, and also I have seen this specific capacitor go bad. That's the only thing I see so far. Let's check these pins. Yeah, like 5 of those pins are shorted to ground. So what do you think? This capacitor or this chip? The first thing I'm going to do is take this capacitor off and see if those shorts are gone. If they're gone, then we'll replace it. If they're not, then we'll replace this chip. Wow, I really sucked that one up. Those of you that are just starting, just take comfort. Sometimes it takes a while, and even when you do quite a few of this sort of thing, sometimes you just suck it up. So you guys saw I accidentally pushed down on that chip right there. This I think is the PWMIC, controls some of the power on this board. That caused these little tiny solder balls, a bunch of them joined together up here, messed up some of these. This isn't a big deal, it's easy to fix, but this sort of thing makes it much more difficult, because then in order to reinstall this, I have to basically re-ball it, which is doable. That's not too much of a problem, but it just makes it much more difficult to install. But the real problem on this board, even though I did mess that up, it actually turned out not being a big deal, because these caps are still shorted, these are still shorted, which means that there's probably a lot more damage on this board than is fixable. It could be these main chips over here you saw when I took the cover off. Underneath those could have gotten liquid damage, and if that happened, then the chips are probably fried, unfortunately. So the bad news is this board is probably not fixable. The good news is we do have some good chips we can harvest from it, and a bunch of other components we can harvest from it. And I think this mainframe and maybe even the screens are good on this. So that's actually some good news, because we do have some consoles with bad screens and stuff like that. So it makes it much easier just to swap the board into this instead of having to replace screens and digitizers and stuff. So not all bad news, but definitely not the turnout I was hoping for. Okay, now this one does not charge at all. I see some problems over here on this connector, but most of the problems it looks like are right here, hopefully. Hopefully it's not like the last one I did. I do see this sticker actually did turn pink. I noticed on the other board it didn't actually turn pink. It should turn pink when it gets liquid damage, but sometimes they don't. So this one looks like it's mostly isolated to here, but like I said, I do see some here, which kind of worries me, because that means there could be other stuff that I don't see as well. Like it looks like maybe even on the edge of that connector. So let's take a look and see if we can clean this off and see if anything's shorted after that. Oh, I do see some right here as well. So there is actually more on this board than it looks like at first. All right, I'm just gonna leave this in the console right now. Not gonna take the board out yet. Just wanna see if I can clean this up enough to see if it'll work as is. Now keep in mind as well, I do usually take the battery connector off. I'll take it off anyways, but since this battery is completely dead, I didn't really worry about it, but normally I do that just to be safe. I don't think it would cause a problem, but you never know. It does look quite a bit better from what I can tell here. Feels like all of those solder joints are intact. These solder joints, when they get kind of eaten away, then they'll just kind of flatten off, and they won't have a bump to them anymore. Those ones all still have the bumps, so I think we're good there. Hopefully, I'll take it up and look at my microscope after I'm done with this testing and check it out more. Let's get a known good battery hooked up and then see if it'll charge. Actually, before that, I'm gonna test that fuse, and then I'm gonna test to see if anything is shorted out. All right. Okay, that seems to be normal there. Actually really good, no shorts at all. And the fuse is good. Okay, so let's hook a battery in and see if it charges. Oh, 0.4. Okay, that dropped down 1.78. That's great news. Let's turn this thing over and see if there's anything on the screen. Cross your fingers. Yes. Look at this. There we go. Let's see if the touchscreen works. Yes. I think. Yep. Awesome. This is great news. So all we had to do on this liquid damaged one is clean it. Now, I did say, and I did notice that there was other liquid damage, so I'm actually going to tear this whole thing down, clean the motherboard, and then put it back together, but this one is fixable. So far things actually aren't looking too bad. So far there's only 2 that I know for sure that I can't fix. The rest of them look like I think they're fixable. So let's hope we can actually fix them and we'll be 6 out of 8. But there still could be things that go wrong, so let's hope for the best.
So let's take another look at number 4. I replaced the charge port. The video chip was shorted, so I replaced that. It does charge normally with a good battery, but it doesn't display with a good battery or the internal battery. So what I'm worried about on this one is I'm worried about there may be more shorts under the main chip, which would mean that main chip could be faulty. So I'm going to turn it over. Let's take a look and see if that's true. So the first thing I'm going to do is check these capacitors right here. There's no short there. No short there. Well, that's not a good sign. Both of these are shorted. So that makes me wonder if maybe this chip is bad or if the chip over here is faulty. I guess the first thing to do would be to remove this chip and see if those shorts are still there. So after replacing this chip, the shorts went away on these 2 guys, but unfortunately still get no display on the screen even with a known good battery. I'm going to remove this board and test the capacitors underneath these chips, and we'll see if there's any shorts down there. Okay, so let's start testing the capacitors underneath the main chip. So that's one I see right now. And there we have another one. Yeah, this whole rail right here. Well, unfortunately this means that there's the chip is shorted out internally, which means this one is not going to work. Really, the only good news is that we do know this chip works, we know this chip most likely works, and we also have the 2 chips on the other side that work, so that's good. We can use this as a parts board and still get chips off of it that are worth something. These chips are about $10 to $13 each, so we still can use that for that, and we always need those chips. But unfortunately, this adds to the list of switches that are not fixable. I believe this is number 3. I think all the rest are fixable, so that would put us at 5 out of 8, but I do need to go ahead and replace some of the screens and do other work on them so I know for sure whether they're 100% fixable or not. So back to our number 1 Nintendo Switch. This one has a faulty LCD. So the motherboard works, it charges and the screen turns on, but the LCD is faulty. So what we're gonna do is replace it with number 2 that's not fixable from liquid damage. So we're gonna put the motherboard from here into here, then we'll swap the serial numbers so we got the correct serial numbers, and then we'll make sure everything works. And here we go. We still need to put the heat pipe on, but we can at least test it and see if it works before we do that. So this one should work, but let's double check and make sure. Charging at 0.24, which is not a normal charging amperage. Let's try switching this around. Still not normal. So what we need to do is check this with a good battery, because it is possible the battery in this one is faulty. All right, we got a known good battery.
And it does show that it's turning on. Definitely have some sort of digitizer thing we need to deal with, but we can do that later. It does turn on and work though. Let's double check the charging. And it does charge normally, so this battery does need to be replaced as well. So after looking at the digitizer on number 2, I also found that there's liquid damage on the digitizer. So this is the unfortunate thing about liquid damaged consoles sometimes there's not even a lot of good parts. For example, the battery we know is faulty, the motherboard is faulty, and now the digitizer itself is faulty. The LCD looked like it might be okay, but I probably won't put that into anything else just because there could be damage on the LCD that I can't tell yet, and it may only last a month or two if I put it in something else. So unfortunately, there's just not that many good parts on this. Now on the motherboard on this one, there will be good parts on that, which is good, the connectors and some of the chips and stuff, but unfortunately, there's just not a lot of good parts on this liquid damaged switch number 2. It's time to replace the battery in switch number 5. There's several ways you can replace the batteries on these, and the way I'm going to do it, I don't recommend you do it this way. Please don't do it this way. I'm going to be using a metal pry tool. The problem with a metal pry tool is it's actually easy to puncture the battery, and if you puncture it, it's most likely going to start on fire. So another way you can do it is you can heat it up a little bit, not too hot because you could also start it on fire. And then another way you can do it is try and pry it up just a little bit and pour some IPA down here. And then as you get it more and more up, you can pour more and more isopropyl alcohol down there, and that will help lift it out. So now this battery's out, we just need to get the battery out of one of the other broken switches to replace it with this one. And there we go. Now we'll try this battery in the one that needs the replacement. Just slide it in. I'm not going to press it down all the way yet. If this one does work, we'll put some weight on this and leave the pressure on it for a while just to make sure that adhesive really sticks. So let's plug in a charge cable and see what it does. 0.37, 0.23. Well, this is not the best news. I did see something flash on the screen, and it looks like this one has a faulty LCD, which we already knew, but I was hoping it would at least charge normally. Okay, let's retry this with a known good battery. This battery could be just faulty. And it does charge normally with a known good battery. So it looks like that battery is probably faulty as well. Let's get this LCD replaced, and then we can find a different battery that is good that we can put in it. The first thing we're going to do when replacing the LCD is remove this. It just makes it easier to get the cables in with that removed. Now you can just remove this, but it's also easier to remove the heat pipe so you can get to that connector better. So that's what we're going to do next. There we go. Is that removed? we can remove this. If we're just doing a digitizer, we don't need to do all that because this is the only cable we need to remove. But since we're doing the LCD, we need to remove this cable and this cable as well. This cable can be difficult to get off and on, so we want to remove all this stuff just to make it as easy as possible. Okay, there's all our cables. Now we just need to flip it over and get the LCD replaced. I'm going to be using this CPB heating mat to soften the adhesive on the switch. And once it's softened, it's going to make it way easier to remove the digitizer, and then I just slip the LCD in and then put the digitizer back on. Then we'll put it back on the heating mat and put a little bit of weight on it just to make sure that adhesive sticks back together nicely and keeps it so it doesn't come apart. So here we go. I'm gonna leave it on there for a good 5 minutes or so. Okay, we've had that on there long enough to soften the adhesive a bit. So you can get your pry tool right here once it's hot enough. I normally don't use metal. I don't have my plastic one right here handy right at the moment. And we can just go along and loosen it as we go. With that adhesive soft, it just comes right up pretty easily. Now the ribbon cables are over here, so we got to be careful of that. This heat mat is available on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description if you guys want something like this. You can do it without. You can do it with just a heat gun or various other things. I've just found that this heat mat makes it so much easier. So that's what I like to use. Because I can just set it on here and go do something else for 5 or 10 minutes or so, and then come back and it's nice and warm for me. Okay, so that actually loosened up both the digitizer and the LCD. So we gotta get this LCD ribbon cable out of here. You can see, maybe you can see it's kind of stuck in there. It's no problem though. So this is for the digitizer here. Now we just need to get the one for the LCD out. We'll be good. So this is this one right here. So we're gonna push it through here. There we go. And now we have it out. So I'm gonna disengage the LCD from this adhesive, try to. Looks like the whole thing's coming apart, which is fine, that's not a big deal. But we do need to get the whole thing off of here so we can reuse this digitizer. If you're doing it, you may just want to replace the digitizer as well. But that's up to you. Well, you go through all the trouble, you know, if you don't do this very often or if it's hard for you to do, then sometimes it's worth it just to do all of it at once. And there we go. Now the new LCD, you need to fold over and then fold this up just a bit. That'll make it easier to get in there. Same with this one. Then we need to get it down in the slot so it comes out like this, just like that. That's what we're looking for. And the same thing with the small one up here. is much easier to do when you're not doing it on camera. So if it looks difficult, don't worry too much about it. It's really not that bad. Okay, let's turn it over. And here we have this cable, and then we have this cable. That's what we're looking for. So we know those are in there correctly. Now we're gonna remove this blue backing off the back. Like that. To be honest, I don't know why they put that on the back. Probably a lot of you guys watching this will know. Now I need to remove this, but I'm not gonna take that off yet. I'm gonna set the digitizer back on. And then once I get this digitizer in place, then I'll take that off and flip it down. Okay, so there we go. We've got that in place. So all we got to do is lower this down. So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to blow it off with canned air to make sure there's no dust in there, and then we'll lower it down fully. Oops. This one you can actually see somebody looks like chipped the edge of the LCD, maybe when they were trying to take that off or something, I don't know. Hopefully the LCD still works though. So this corner is going to be a little bit funky because of that. What I'm going to do is try and get a few of these little things off of here. It's a bummer to do all the work and then still have funky stuff on the screen, but in this case there's not that much I can do about it. Okay, now we're gonna press the screen all the way down in here, digitizer. Okay, and that looks good. I'm not gonna put too much weight on this yet because there is a chance, like for example, if there was a bunch of dust over here or something, then I'd have to re-lift that up. So I don't want this on there fully yet. So what we need to do now is connect it all and make sure that everything works. So that's what I'm gonna do next. So we've got all our cables on there correctly, except for this one. Now that one is on correctly. Now let's get the good battery in, and let's see what it does. That's great news. Come on, baby. There we go. Okay, and here we go. This looks great. That all looks good. Even down in the corner, I don't remember which corner it was, I think it was this corner. No, it was this corner. You can see I don't actually see any problems at all, so this looks great. Okay, great news. This one, once we replace the battery, looks like it's gonna be fixed. We replaced the digitizer and LCD and the battery. So we do have a battery indicator here. It is charging normally, so this one is also fixed. And for number 5, we also replaced the LCD and the battery on number 5. And let's check if it charges normally and shows on the screen. And it does. So number 5 is also fixed. So out of the 8 Nintendo Switches we bought, 5 of them were fixable. I predicted I could fix 6, so I was a little off there, but still close enough that I think we can probably make money on it. Now it's time for me to finish these up and get them listed on eBay, and I will update you guys on the prices that I sold them for as soon as I get them sold.